When you're ready.
St. Louis Park, Minnesota, 2014. Cooperstown, New York, 2018. And St. Louis Park, Minnesota, 2024. As you can tell, I've always been a big baseball guy. I've always played my entire life since I can honestly remember, like being born. I was always a baseball guy. I want to take you back to that Cooperstown picture. In Cooperstown, I played in a tournament where you had games from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. pretty much every day for a week straight. And in that tournament, there's a huge valley that the complex sits between it's just kind of right in the middle between two large hills. This valley made the weather fluctuate between the, let's say, midday games and the early morning and late games. Even though the tournament was mid-July, it still got to like 60, 50 degrees compared to the 95 degrees it was during the middle of the day. So very interesting to play in. And that kind of sparked my experiment and my interest in my experiment, which is simulating the impact of weather and the temperature on pitchers' performance and pitch effectiveness. Now, living in Minnesota, it is quite difficult to start a spring season without colder weather, and dealing with that now, it's not fun, especially for a pitcher. So my question is, how does cold weather affect a pitcher? Their control, their command, all of that stuff. My methodology. First, I have my subjects warm up, just regular stretching, just playing catch, doing whatever they need to do to get ready to simulate a game situation off the mound. Secondly, I had each subject throw 5 fastballs and 5 curveballs with room temperature balls, as this would help me set a control for my experiment. And then I had them throw 10 cooled balls, still 5 fastballs and 5 curveballs. I based all of my research off of these 3 key components: the velocity, the spin rate, which is measured in rotations per minute, and the horizontal and vertical breaks, which is measured in inches. After this, I gained qualitative feedback from all my pitchers. I had 4 pitchers that threw for me. And then I also gained the quantitative data off of the Repsodo technology I was able to use at the facility I did this experiment at. Which, there's a picture of the facility, and this is a picture of my cold temperature balls. It was around 50, 55, 56 degrees, I'm pretty sure. Obviously that fluctuated because not every ball is going to stay the same temperature, but I just had them overnight in this cooler bag, kept it in the fridge during the school day, and then just picked it up, went to my experiment. This is the Repsodo technology I used. As you can see, there's the velocity, the spin rate, and then the horizontal and vertical breaks. And this is just a graphic of how the ball was spinning. And my results. These are the qualitative results. For the room temperature, I had some quotes of these pitchers that said, "Just a normal day of pitching, nothing different. Complete control of movement, and my personal favorite, I threw gas." Now for these cool balls, we got a much different result. I got quotes of, "Sensation of the ball felt very different. It almost slipped out of my hand when I started to throw it. It was harder for me to hit the target. It didn't feel like I had my command, and glad there wasn't a batter in the box." You can see that even the pitchers felt a difference between the cold balls and the regular balls, just based off of the sole temperature of it. And I didn't have any wind, it was in a room temperature environment, so it was just solely the balls. Now for the quantitative results. Here are my 2 graphs for the velocity and the measure of impact of overall speed. As you can tell, these are the room temperature balls and these are the cold temperature balls. Now for this one, let's look at pitch 4 from figure 1. It clocked in as just over 50 miles an hour, as pitch 3 from figure 2 clocked in as around 80 miles per hour. We can't conclude whether room temperature, climate, we can't conclude whether the room temperature climate made a difference, because obviously I wouldn't want to risk the participants to injury being outside in the cold during February where it's cold, snowy, you don't want to risk any injuries. So the temperature had little impact on the overall velocity. Skill and ability was the biggest driver of variability in this part of the experiment. Now for the measure of impact, the pitch's total movement and run. For pitch 3 on this room temperature graph, the total RPM was just over 1,500 rotations per minute. Well, in figure 4, pitch 3 had spin of just over 2,000 rotations per minute. As you can tell, this has a lot more spin of the ball, and that's caused by the denser air, and the colder and drier conditions cause for the ball to spin a lot more, just because that denser air is cutting under it, and it just gives it that little break that helps the ball move more and run more compared to the actual vertical breaks. And then my third and final data point was measuring the horizontal and vertical breaks. So for pitch number 2 on the figure 5 right there, it had a horizontal break of 0 inches and a vertical break of 18.1, which means that this ball vertically broke 18 inches without even without even moving a single inch over. That was a breaking ball, specifically a 12-6 curve, which means it goes from 12 o'clock on the clock to 6 o'clock on the clock. And it had no horizontal cut to it at all. And then this pitch contrasts perfectly from pitch 18 from this figure right here, as that pitch had a horizontal break of 0.3 inches and a vertical break of 1.3 inches. That was also a breaking ball. This ball was a cutter that barely broke horizontally, but just barely dropped below where the barrel would be. All of this spin is caused, again, by the wind and the cold air, because that colder air is just cutting under it, making it, the density of it is just making the spin rotations more evident and just helping the ball spin more and more and drop more and break more. So my conclusions are that my point number 1 is velocity and control in colder temperatures are based more on the skill and abilities of the pitcher and not just solely the temperature. Obviously, somebody who's 12 years old will maybe top out at 65 miles per hour if you're lucky, but people who are 17, 18, you'll hit 90, 80, something like that. So that's obviously just skill based. My point number 2 is, regardless of the obstacles, pitchers typically adjust and find ways to still be productive. Even you could see in my project that at the end, more of the pitchers were kind of leveling out. The data was leveling out, getting more even results as the pitchers warmed up. Like, as you get used to it, you start to find your ways to figure it out and throw more strikes, have more control, all of that. And point number 3, through data and scholarly research, I found that the wind is a major factor in influencing spin rate and the horizontal and vertical breaks. As the denser air gets cut by that ball, it creates more spin. Just helps the ball move, helps the ball drop. Just all of that just helps it. I mean, it's a wonder. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Hey, some questions. How did you determine which of the results generated by your research method was most important in informing your new understanding?
I took 20 pitches from all 4 of my pitchers, which there were only, I think, 82 pitches, if I can remember correctly, that people threw. So I randomly took 20 of those, put them all onto a graph, made sure it looked right, and then I just decided that it looked good enough. I could get all of my research that I needed. I could show my conclusions, so that's how I ended up with all of my data.
Okay. How do your findings provide direction for future research in the field?
It just shows that, I mean, you can't really do much to risk injury to colder pitchers, or to pitchers through colder weather. You don't want to throw them outside on a 30-degree day and have them throw a max intent bullpen. Like, that's just not fair for them, not fair for the sport. So I think the most you could do is lower the temperature in a room and actually like freeze the balls and have the balls contained in like some sort of contraption that keeps the balls all one temperature. Because that's what I found difficult with mine, is all the balls after 2 or 3 throws, they were pretty much back to normal temperature. So I had so many balls in there that ended up working out, but it kind of threw off all the like cold temperature simulation things. So definitely have like a colder room, colder balls, and then maybe like wrap the pitcher's arm in a cold towel or something for a minute or two, just to simulate that cold sensation your body feels.
Okay. Let's see. How did you handle the uncertainty of the research process?
I kind of ran with it. Like, my first idea was doing something with brain injuries, and that was way too much. It would have gotten way too complicated. I couldn't get with patients or anything. So I just kind of ran with it. I've always loved weather, I've always loved baseball, so that was just my kind of inspiration. And knowing that somehow if I could combine the two, either way, like whatever my conclusions were, I would have loved it, and I did love it. So.
Okay, cool.